Hi guys, so today I'm going to be showing you how I got a 9 in my GCSE art. I'm going to be flicking through my sketchbook and giving you some tips and tricks on how to get there. Just to clarify, I actually did my GCSEs during 2019 and 2020, which was right before COVID, so my final grade was actually a predicted grade, but since in my mock exam I got a 9, I'm going to label this video of how to get a 9 in your GCSEs. Even though my experience is different than any other before or after will be. It's not going to be the same, but hopefully this is still quite helpful to just get a general idea of how I managed to do it and how you can do it as well. I'm just going to be showing you the general kind of layout and structure that my teacher advised everyone in my class to do. You can apply that to any module or topics that you do at your school, and hopefully it applies quite similarly. So I did 4 different topics. The first one was natural forms, then it was identity, urban environment, which was my mock, and then the last one was fragments in time, which was actually the beginning of what was supposed to be my real exam, but it was cut off a few months before it was meant to go forward. So I'm going to kind of show you the basic structure that we did. So every piece of work that we did wasn't in a sketchbook, it was actually on a 3 pieces of paper like this, and I think that's because my school wanted to save some money on the students. It actually made it a lot easier and lighter to carry around from school and back home and around school. So the way that you're going to see all of my work layout is in assessment objectives, which is what the examiners are going to keep an eye out for, and that's actually how they mark your work. That is honestly probably the best way to complete your sketchbook instead of kind of throwing everything in all at once and not following a great structure, even though that's something that you might want to do, and that's kind of what I wanted to do as well, and I actually hated the way that my teachers told me to do it this way, but looking back now it was the simplest and it saved me a lot of time and it made it just very clear and concise. So the assessment objectives that we kind of narrowed down into categories were research, observation, development, and final piece. Then you can kind of branch out of those and you'll see what I mean in a second. But those are the key topics to keep in mind, and that's what you should follow in your sketchbook. They don't really have to follow in that order, except final piece obviously has to be last, but you can do observation first and then research and then develop. Okay, so I'm going to start off with natural forms, which I actually really enjoyed, and I'm just going to quickly show you just flashes of my work. First, always start off with some kind of mood board or mind map. I'm pretty sure every teacher's going to prompt everyone to do that, and you don't have to use photo paper. I know that's what they prefer and that's what we were always pushed to do as well, but I didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't want to use so much photo paper over my whole 2 years, so I just printed on normal paper. As long as it's clear and good quality photos, you should be fine. So that counts as my research, as well as some photography. I'm going to count this as research as well, just at the start of my module, showing that I observed and researched the topic of natural forms. Just take pictures of literally grass in your back garden, some flowers, very basic things like trees, nothing crazy. You don't have to go out of your way, you don't have to invest in a massive camera. You can use kind of phone camera because they're really good these days anyway, so you'll be fine. Some more photos, and then for my observation, this basically just means drawings, observational drawings. So I drew these flowers from photos. You can also trace. There's no kind of document that says you can't trace in your GCSEs. It's completely allowed, and it's not something to be ashamed of. Obviously try not to, and it's best to develop your natural skills, but if you're running out of time, or you know it would look best if you did trace it and you can show your skills in maybe the background or some aspect of the piece, feel free to do it and you will still get the grade. Some more observation just on different watercolour backgrounds, very simple, very clearly laid out, nothing crazy. I've seen other schools do obviously sketchbooks for their GCSEs and they always really go hard with the layout and they make it really 3D and you can fold stuff and open stuff and there's things flying off of it, and I've always wanted to do that as well. Working on paper kind of stopped me from doing it, but looking back now it just shows that you don't need to do all of that, and if you don't have the time or the energy or the talent to do that, you shouldn't have to worry and you'll still do well. I did some very basic Photoshop, and you can literally do this in Microsoft Paint. I just did it with those drawings that I showed earlier. I think I'm holding this upside down. It took me about an hour maybe, and it's very simple. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just show that you try different things. That's kind of what they're looking for. More observation and research. Did some random tags. I hung them on trees. This was my teacher's idea. This was like a homework that I rushed one day. I just put them up on trees, and this, again, this works. You can do very simple, easy things. Take cool pictures, put them in unfamiliar places and make it look very thought out, even though it doesn't have to be. I did some work on paper to show observation again and experimentation. Just try as many new things as you possibly can. Keep it very simple. I stuck it on cardboard, which is cheap and you can get it anywhere, and I literally just drew lines, and you can tell it's a seashell, I hope. Did some flowers with some gold paint. Also, don't get overwhelmed by the amount of work that I'm showing. It's been done over 2 years, which is time that you're going to have as well, and that is a long amount of time to do a lot of work. So don't get too overwhelmed with this, because this did take me ages and a few sleepless nights to finish. Then it was time to do a bit of artist research. The teacher would give us artists and we couldn't really choose our own, which again at the time I didn't really like because I wanted to do my thing, but it doesn't really matter because it's relevant. So she suggested Ernst Haeckel, and I actually really like his work, but as you're going to see soon, it doesn't really relate to anything I did. In with Georgia O'Keeffe. It doesn't really relate to anything that I did with my flowers, but I guess what I took away from it, what I tried to put in my annotations, is that she used watercolour a lot, which I like to use as well. So that's the only thing I took away from her, is the watercolour. Take away any little thing from any artist and go on about it in your annotations. That's another thing I should touch on, is the annotations. You really don't need a lot. I only put a few sentences just describing what the artist does in one sentence, then what I did in one sentence, and how that links, and how it links to the overall topic. And if you can, link it to what your final piece is going to be, if you know yet, but you don't have to know this early on. I didn't know until the very, very end, so don't stress. To show different things, so I did some stitching. And now it's time for development, so this is where you should kind of think about your final piece ideas. So I knew I wanted to do something squared with flowers, that's just what I like to do. And I did 3 various kind of styles, and then it was easy for me to pick my favourite one. So if you try 3 very different things, it shows that you're trying different techniques and you're putting them side by side and analysing them, and then it's easy to choose your favourite one and talk about why it's your favourite, and that in itself is very developed thinking in your annotation. The development stage is where you should actually annotate the most, I think, but still, again, I'm not doing that much. I'm just kind of talking about very basic things. I'm just talking about what you can literally see on the page. If I read this to you, it would literally just say, here I painted this with watercolour, I did some drawings with fine liner, these are the colours that I used. You can see in yellow, I highlighted the key words to make it really clear for the examiner to kind of focus in on the main point. They're not going to be sat there reading this very clearly. So yeah. Then I wanted these to be my final pieces, but my teacher didn't like them, so I just put them in anyway as my development, and you should do that with your work that isn't quite working out and you think you want to throw it away and you hate it, but no, you should keep it in. I think you can kind of tell it's rushed, which is why she wasn't happy with it, and I'm glad that she pushed me to do a bit better. I stuck with the square idea and I did my final piece on these boards. Make sure to make your final piece stand out on different coloured paper or on a canvas or anything like that, but again, I'm showing you that you can use very cheap materials. I didn't use many canvases. I don't think I used any canvases in my GCSEs, just because again, they're a bit expensive. I personally don't like working on canvases that much. I prefer painting on paper, and yeah, it's just very cheap, very easy, accessible, and I'm sure your school probably provides you with materials like this. I didn't pay for card or anything like that. It was all at my school in my art class for free, and I'm sure many schools do that, or most should do that. And that was it for my first module. So as you see, it kind of follows that basic structure of research, observation, development, and final piece. So the rest of the work that I'm going to show you now follows the same thing, and I'm just going to kind of rush through it and show you. This topic was identity. So it was based on portraits, again, very basic mood board for my research, very basic photography for my research. These were literally taken on my phone, just with a lamp in the dark. Use your family or your friends, which was actually quite a fun part of doing the art homework for me. Some observation, just some easy features. If you're not very good at drawing, there is loads of tutorials out there on the internet on how to draw faces, face features, anything. Even Maya actually have a tutorial on how to draw an eye, so I'm going to link it down below. And then also going to mention that because I drew outside of school just in my own time, I was actually able to just put loads of my random drawings from home in my portfolio and have them graded as part of my work. So if you draw outside of schoolwork and it relates to your topic even a slightly bit, make sure to put it in, and then it looks like you did loads more work and it saves you time. Again, I recycled my work. I have a video on how to draw this, and I just stuck it in there. Then observation, I edited my pictures to make them look more light and dark. Nothing crazy. Again, no need to download and pay for Photoshop. I'm pretty sure I did this on my phone. Just like lowered the exposure and the contrast, heightened the contrast. And not even photo paper. This is printer paper. Again, really random pictures that I drew in my own time. Stuck them on. Really brief explanation. Then I did some research, so one of the artists was Guy Denning. Make sure to use different backgrounds if you can. Just anything other than white paper is going to look good with anything, even the most basic thing that you draw on it. So newspaper, brown paper, it makes more of an impact than you would think. This was acetate onto coloured backgrounds, and again I traced these. If you do it that way, it doesn't focus on you tracing the image, it focuses on how you arrange the colours, how you did the shapes, how you thought out to do that. And in your annotation, focus on talking about that instead of just saying, I traced these images and I put them onto coloured backgrounds. You have to really emphasise what you did with everything. And in the annotation there, I think I watched a video just like this one when I was doing my GCSEs, and one of the videos that I watched said to do 4 different parts in your annotation. So there's a describe, analyse, evaluate, interpret. So I did each box for each one, and that really helped me structure what I'm talking about, because sometimes there isn't much to say about what you're doing, but if you follow kind of keywords like that, it makes it so much easier. My development, I did those photos onto acetate, and then I did these really basic backgrounds, which again are nothing crazy. This took me a few seconds, but it looks cool with a picture over it, so you can easily do that. I just squiggled lines onto normal drawings. I drew Ross Lynch, old and young, and this is acetate, old man, and then I scribbled an old man on top of him. This was very easy, and you can basically trace with this acetate from your laptop. This ended up being my final piece. I painted acrylic onto acetate, and then I put different objects that kind of linked to the title of identity, because I realised that I didn't even link my work this whole time. I just drew portraits. So I did identity with objects and interest behind the images, and this relates to like my photography ones because it's me like from the photos. So make sure you try to link it as best as you can. But with this one I didn't link it because I drew Steve Lacey because I thought I was cool and edgy in year 9. And yeah, these were my final pieces. I actually really like this one, and I put some words into it. Make sure to include text if you can, it always makes work a bit more cool. I put text in the guitar strings as well, which is quite cool. I should have put his lyrics into that, but I wanted to make it about identity, so I put who am I? Identity. Interest. Individuality. Make it very obvious. Now I'm going to show my urban environment topic, which was my mock exam. So I'm going to kind of classify this as my real exam, even though it wasn't, but let's just say it is for the sake of the video. So first, mind map. I actually really like this splatter effect. You probably see that a lot in GCSE sketchbooks. Very basic mood boards of relating artists. I literally just searched graffiti artists in the internet and I found some of these, but most of these were given to me by my teacher. And observational pictures. Because this was my mock exam, I actually used a proper camera and proper photo paper because my teacher was actually getting sick of me for using just a printer. So photo paper does make a difference, but I only used it for my mock. I took these photos just out and about in town. These are actually quite cool, but you can probably travel down to anywhere. You must know an area in your town that does graffiti. And then I just took some of buildings and architecture because that relates to graffiti and urban environment. I actually really enjoyed doing these. You can again trace them, do whatever. I used pro markers, which if you follow my channel, you know I used to love those markers. And they're the same ones I used in this. They still last me to this day. And they're really good for blending and stuff. But I also use Sharpie, I think, for that eye. I use Sharpie because they do run out eventually. I think I used paint for this little man. But this is my favourite topic that I did, I think. And I didn't expect it to be, but it turned out quite well. I did some observational drawings of buildings and architecture, which was really difficult, especially this, like there's no clear proportion to it. Those lines, I added those lines in after I drew the thing, so they weren't actually helpful in any way. But again, you don't have to do it super precisely and amazingly. The artist that I studied, again, I included that acetate technique because I really liked it. Some buildings, and I just scribbled graffiti letters over them. My favourite, I think. I really like how this turned out. I used really thick acrylic paint as like kind of like a texture for this, and then I did pen for the graffiti bit. And I used train tickets on acetate, or I cut some of them out with a craft knife. Buildings and some architecture. This one I actually used a ruler, and I really like these, and I used very cheap pens and I just made them bleed with water, and it turned out really cool. It came to development and I found this image on Google, and I thought it would be a cool idea to kind of make it about the graffiti artist but also include everything else. So I did like a little mind map showing my other ideas. I wanted to really do this one, but I had to show some other ones, so I thought of painting on bricks. I thought of doing something with a street sign, with a brick, with an image, but I stuck with this one, and I talked about each process around them. Again, these are really rough sketches, nothing crazy, nothing really shaded properly. Go all the way out with what you want to stick with, try different ideas, tried chopping them up. I tried acetate, I tried just normal pencil, I tried pen, I tried no background, thought about the background, and talk about everything that you're using, just annotate everything. Because this was my exam, I did quite a lot of annotation on this bit, but it's not completely necessary, but I thought I wanted to explain a lot of the changes that I was making with the background, more annotations, and I used those keywords: describe, evaluate, analyze, interpret for my annotations. This was my final piece, and it turned out like this. I actually really like this. You can't really see well because of the pencil, but I basically made a massive train ticket with an imprint of maps on the background. Then I did graffiti with Posca pens, and then I did a really detailed pencil drawing. So this shows collage, printing, layering, like assembly of colours and styles and techniques and mixing everything all together. And again, it's on that iconic black paper that I wanted all my final pieces to be on. And then as a really random topic, one of my teachers did this. You can't really see from afar, but there's actually pictures of artists' work hidden within this, and we had to kind of extend onwards from it. So this is a really cool exercise for getting creative. So just print off random art pieces, stick them on a massive page. There's quite a few in there. There's one there, there's one there, and there, and then just extend onwards from them. So that was my main kind of body of work, and then I'm going to show you the last bit, which was supposed to be my real exam, and I'm so glad it wasn't, because I really wasn't feeling this topic. It was called Moments in Time, and I just didn't really know where I was going to go with it, so I'm just going to show you what I've got even though it's unfinished. I did a mind map, some mind maps, brainstorms. Then I did loads of mood boards with magazine cutouts, just because I enjoy doing that. I have a video on how to make a sketchbook cover with magazine cutouts because I really enjoy assembling them all together. So I did quite a few of these just because I enjoy it. And I wanted to kind of go into the theme of decades and different fashion trends or makeup trends. Drawings for that were this. So I did different makeup for the 1940s, 80s, 90s, 70s, stuff like that. This one is traced. This is all traced with black carbon paper. And I'm sure you can tell that it is. So if you do trace, try not to do it all the time because I think it's quite noticeable. And there's nothing wrong with it. I wasn't trying to hide the fact that I traced, but if all of it looks the same, you want to have a bit of variety in there. Then I did photos of my friend, very beautiful photos of different makeup decades, and this was so fun to do. We did like twiggy makeup, it's quite dark on camera, but black and white makeup, modern makeup. Some of the artists that I researched, again, I couldn't really find anyone who related, so I did Laura Maccabee, which is just photographed portraits, and I recreated my own with drawings and with photography, again on very normal paper. This is me. Salvador Dali. It doesn't really relate, other than it relates to the title, Moments in Time, but not to my fashion things at all. See me give enough of these, you can see the lack of effort, and I just really wasn't feeling this topic. I hated it. This was like a politics artist that we were told to research. I just don't like it. Then I did my own artist finally, and I did the makeup artist from Euphoria has an artist research page, and you can use anyone, so I thought this was quite an interesting one. And I did paintings with gemstones stuck on it, and I actually really enjoyed this research page. This was my favourite, and it was cool to do someone that I actually liked. Final piece, I did mind map for my initial ideas. So I wanted to do like a clock with eye looks, or a camera with a time clock and some kind of film coming out of it, or a king dressed up in modern clothes, or like this kind of strip of fashion going across. And this was my last page, and then COVID hit and that was stopped. Actually really glad that my final exam didn't happen in the end, because you can tell the difference between the graffiti topic and this one, and you can see how much I didn't really care about this one. And the graffiti one was just a lot more interesting to me, and you could tell that in my effort, and I think I wouldn't have done as well in my real one if not for COVID and my mock exam. So take from that what you will, and I'm going to leave this here, and hopefully this was quite a helpful video, even though it was kind of rushed, and all I can do is really show you and explain my tips, but I hope you gathered a few things from this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try and come back with a few more videos. If you are interested in my A-level work or my work from before this, I can also make videos about that, because I have even found my year 7 books and some very questionable work in. So if you want to see that, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in my next video.